Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar, Getting the Most Out of Dynamics NAV, Mastering the Service Management Module, brought to you by ArcherPoint. The Service Management Module that comes with Dynamics NAV provides a great framework. However, out of the box, that's exactly what it is, a framework. Fortunately, Dynamics NAV is flexible enough to allow modification so the tool can be tailored to exactly what your business needs to succeed. The capabilities include contract management, service order processing, discounts, dispatching, and much more. To get the most out of Dynamics NAV, you need to understand the possibilities of the service management module and master the execution thereof. Our presenter today is Tom Marcello. In his 21 plus years of corporate business experience, Tom has held the diverse roles of system administrator, account executive, trainer, support representative, marketing associate, and financial analyst. This diversity has given him a deep understanding of the overall operating requirements of businesses and gives him the flexibility to provide value in any environment. Tom has more than 15 years of experience working with Microsoft Dynamics NAV and is currently engaged at ArcherPoint as a senior consultant, providing consulting, implementation, and support services to a multitude of clients. In today's webinar, Tom will demonstrate a variety of features and functionality of the Service Management Module. He'll show you the options and ways to tailor the tool to fit your business needs. He will help you master the Service Management Module. So let's get started. Tom, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Much appreciated. And thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar today. What I thought would be best to get started on this is to give you all kind of a day in the life of service as to how it would flow through Dynamics NAV and the entire module. It's going to basically give us a overview of all the different functional areas, or most of the different functional areas in there, and show you, some of the functionalities of how it works out of the box, and then maybe also discuss a little bit of improvements that could be made as we're going through. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and switch this screen over to NAV, and you should be seeing right now Dynamics NAV 2017, the latest version. We have in this particular screen here, we're in a role center called Dispatcher, and this is the out-of-the-box service role center that it comes with Microsoft Dynamics NAV. So to start off, what I'd like to do for this kind of day in the life of service is start by defining the company. So we have let's say Cronus Service USA here. We're a company that not only sells equipment, and in this particular case, we're going to be selling forklifts and servicing forklifts because everybody can kind of relate to that. So we're going to start off by selling the forklift and then show you how that flows through the whole system to get to the service module. So if I come down here on the left to sales invoices for a second, I have pre-set up a sales invoice because this demonstration is not for showing how the sales functionality works, but it is related to service in the sense that when I go ahead and sell a forklift here, and I define which particular forklift I'm selling via, let's say, a serial number, this sale of that will create what we call a service item. And a service item in Dynamics NAV is kind of it's the master record, per se, of capturing all the information related to the work we do on that particular forklift. So if I just go ahead and post this service invoice, that is going to create my service item for me. So if I click on the left side here onto service items, you will see that this service item number 48 was created automatically for us. So working in the system here, you'll see that it created this, it puts our description in, it puts the associated inventory item in there, as well as the service item group code, as we call it. Now, the fact that we had this group code attached to the item is what created this, and then also captured our serial number for us. NAV automatically sets the status of that service item to installed, which means that we've given it over to the customer. And over to the right here, if there was any warranty that you went ahead and assigned to that, so let's say you had like a 1-year warranty on parts and labor, it would automatically put that warranty starting and ending date based on the sale date. Now, I sold this effective 7/1 of 2017, so that's why I brought it in here. Now, you have setups in the service setup area where you can define the percentages that you want to cover for warranty for parts and labor. For this particular example, I've left them at 0 at this point, but you could default it into 100% or 50% for parts and so forth. Now, if I scroll a little farther down on this service item, you'll see that it captured the customer that we sold it to. It also captures any type of shipping information where we might have sent it to if there was a ship to code. And then down here at the bottom, it shows the default contract cost and default contract value. We're going to get into doing a planned maintenance contract on this forklift. And what these fields do for you is this is the default value for that particular contract as to what we're going to charge the customer. Okay, so let's say we're going to charge them $2,250 per year for a planned maintenance contract. That's based off of a percentage of the sale price as well as a percentage of the cost. Now, this cost amount is actually just for statistical purposes. When we take a look at the actual service contract, you'll see how it defaults in, and we'll discuss that then, but you do not actually need to have the contract cost assigned to it, because when we do our planned maintenance against it, we're actually going to be sending techs out there to do that planned maintenance, and that's where we're really going to be capturing the actual cost. But this could be used if you wanted to, let's say, allocate some sort of overhead expense, the administrative time to create this contract. Now down here at the bottom, it captures what our the sales cost was. So it cost us $10,000, but we sold it for $15,000. And then, of course, the sales date over here. So if I come up to the top here and I look at the Navigate tab, you'll see that there's a choice here for resource skills. One of the things about Nav and the service item in the service management area is that you can assign skills that are necessary for a particular technician to have to be able to work on that. So let's say I put in here the being a forklift technician is required in order to do any type of service on this. And this will come into play when we go ahead and assign the technician that we want to go out and do work on that piece of equipment. So I've assigned that skill set to it, okay? And then over here to the right, you'll notice that there is a feature here called service ledger entries, and as well as warranty ledger entries. So as we're posting information through the service module to this forklift, this is going to capture all of that information in those ledger entries. So right now, as you can see, it's blank because we just brand new created this item. So we're going to go ahead and actually generate some of those ledger entries, and we'll come back and take a look at those in just a minute. So that is our service item card. Okay, so a service item card is necessary in order to start capturing the time and materials we spend in performing that service work. So what I'd like to do now is, now that we've sold this item to the customer, we have the service item set up properly with all the different skill sets and such that are required for it. Let's go ahead and create a planned maintenance contract. So I'm going to go ahead and hit New. Now, service contracts in Dynamics Nav are fairly flexible. There's a couple of things I'm going to discuss as we go through them, some of the gotchas and some of the good features of it. But regardless, when I click off of that contract number field, one of the things it does is ask you if you want to create a contract using a template. So you have this ability to assign these contract templates to predefine certain things that go onto the contract. So let's take a look at this planned maintenance contract template that I set up for you. So this is a planned maintenance contract we're assigning to it. We've defined that as PM for the contract group code. This allows us to filter our contracts by that group code. The service order type, when we actually get to working with the work orders that the technician is going to be working on to go ahead and perform that work, it's going to default that service order type of PM onto it to know that that's what was created for. The default service period, here I've defined it as every 3 months. So the idea behind a service contract is we're going to bill the customer for some contract dollar amount, right? But we're going to go ahead and perform work against that contract over a period of time. So this is where you can plan that and say, I want to go ahead and set up that a technician is going to go out and service that piece of equipment, in this case the forklift, every 3 months. You could do any type of period you wish, every 6 months, 1 year, 1 week if you wish. It depends on the type of equipment that you're servicing. Now, if I come down here to the service contract account group code and I take a look at this, you'll notice that when I look into this screen here, it defines a couple of GL accounts that are posted, that we post to. So you have the ability in Nav to define what we call a prepaid contract. And that prepaid contract account is defined right here, and then you have your non-prepaid contract account here. This is all accounting based. For any accountants on the line that might be looking at this, the idea behind this is that we can drive the initial posting of that service contract revenue to, let's say, a liability account here, and then let's say we build them for an entire year in advance, which is the example we're going to go ahead and use. We can monthly move over the monthly amount to an actual revenue recognition account, to the profit or sales account, and that's this account defined here. So I'll go through that process as we go along through that. Now, this default invoice period for the contract is by the year. Now you'll notice there's a few options available to us. Nav out of the box will let you bill by the month, every 2 months, quarterly, half year, yearly, or none at all. If you just want to keep track of a contract because based on the sale price of what you sold the customer, maybe it comes with a 1-year contract, but we're going to give them some sort of a discount on, let's say, the parts and material that go into it because we're not necessarily charging them. In this case, though, we're going to leave it at year, okay? And we're going to define that discount, because we're charging them up front for it, we're going to actually give them 100% parts and labor discount on this contract whenever we're going out to perform the planned maintenance work that is part of the contract. So as you can see here, this also defines it as a prepaid contract. So that's what I mentioned when I went into that service contract account group code. And then over here to the right, one other key thing is they combine invoices. I always check that checkbox, because if you have, let's say, multiple contracts, service contracts for the same customer, they bought multiple pieces of equipment from you at different times, and you're billing them on a yearly or monthly basis or something, Nav will actually combine those invoices into one invoice to the customer, but it'll separate it out by the contract. Now, lastly, on the service contract template is the ability to define those service discounts I just mentioned. So here we've got the service item group, which means that anything that's part of this, we're going to give them 100% for any parts that go into it. And then any resources that are in here, we're going to go ahead and give 100% for the labor charge of that. And you can define that by specific groups if you wish, and have specific starting dates as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and choose this planned maintenance contract. And what that did for me is it just filled in all those fields that are in part of that template to go ahead on there. And now what I'm going to do next is choose the customer that we just sold to, New Concepts Furniture. And that defaults a bunch of information onto the system, onto the contract for us. So it's grabbed our customer information. There's our contract group code. The starting date of the contract, we defaulted it to be as of 7/1. Now, a key thing about the starting date, just to point out in the service contracts, is Nav does a great job of invoicing the contracts, especially when you do it as of the start of a given month. If I were to start this mid-month, Nav will go ahead and prorate that first month. So that is one downside to the service contracts, is they work great if you're doing it just on the first of the month. If you're trying to do mid-month billing, where I want it to, let's say, bill from 6/15 of this year through 6/15 of next year, becomes a little bit harder to accomplish there. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and choose that 7/1 start date. Now, if I scroll a little farther down, I'm going to skip over the line section for a second here. We've got our bill to information for the customer, which of course brought in our payment terms and all that fun stuff. The ship to information down here, there's our service period that we defined, right? So I got 3 months. I'm going to go out there and perform that work. Our service order type defaulted in right from there. And then down here, you'll see that we've got the invoice period for the year. So the first invoice period it's going to go out is 7/1 to 6/30. It is a prepaid contract, like we mentioned before. We're going to come back and look at some of that as well. And then you could even enter down at the bottom, if you wish, an expiration date. I'm going to go ahead and leave that blank for now. You can always reopen the contract and change that expiration date later if the customer decides to cancel, let's say, after a given year. Okay, so if I come back up to the top now, to the line section, this is where we're now going to choose the service item that we just created. So if I do a lookup, this filters the list to all of the different forklifts that might be owned by this customer. Okay, so in this example, we chose, we had service item number 48, which was what was created for us. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and say okay, and that adds that to the contract. Now, if you had more than one service item you wish to put on a contract, you simply just go to the next line and enter that information. Now, if you recall over to the right here, this is where it grabbed that line cost and the line value, everything there. So this line value is really truly the most important field here, because the act of putting in a line value, and of course this defaulted in from nav, that goes ahead and updates the contract down here. So if you had more than one service item down on this particular contract, it would add all those dollar amounts up to give you the total annual amount for that contract. So scrolling back up again, I mentioned before about the line cost. If you wanted to allocate some sort of a cost amount, you certainly can do it on here. I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to blank out the cost. It's merely for statistical purposes only. I'm going to show you how we can capture actual cost when we go along and process some service orders against this. So now if I scroll a little farther to the right as well, you see our service period is every 3 months, and then you have the ability to define what the next planned service date is. So we're going to leave it as today. Okay, we're going to process everything as of 7/1, or today as the system shows, and then, but you could define that to be, look, you know, we just sold this, we don't need service for another 3 months from now, so you could change that first service date to 10/1 if you wish. I'll leave it at 7/1 because there's a reason for that, and I'll show you in a second here. So this put everything on the contract exactly as we wanted it. We're going to build the $22.50 per year for that. So once this contract has been filled out in completion, okay, you can go ahead and sign the contract. And before I do that, I just want to point out that the service discounts that we talked about before did come onto the contract. And that's a relevant piece of information as we go through and process these work orders. So I will go ahead and click the sign contract button. What that does for us is that allows us to start invoicing on this contract. So basically it changed my status of the contract to signed, locked it so that I can't make any changes to it at this point. And right now, since we're billing in advance as of 7/1, I can actually generate my first contract invoice for this. So I can generate the first service invoice. And I do that up here by clicking this Create Service Invoice button. Now before I do that, I'm just going to minimize this for a second because I wanted to point out on the Role Center, there is I've added this button here to create service contract invoices. If I go ahead and run this will actually create any invoices through a given date. So the typical scenario is I got multiple contracts out for various different customers, and let's say I'm billing them on a monthly basis. I want to generate those invoices, let's say once a month. I can do it in this batch process. By doing it this way, it'll scan through all of your open contracts, generate any invoices for you right from this screen. So I wanted to point that out, that there is that batch process to do, because they're commonly used when you're doing multiple contracts. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to kick off that contract or that invoice just by creating the service invoice from here. So I say yes to creating that service invoice, tells me the invoice was created successfully, and if I scroll down to my information now you'll notice that my next invoice date has changed from 7/1 of 17 to 7/1 of 18. Remember, we're billing in advance. It captures that 7/1 of 17 invoice, so it invoiced from 7/1 of 17 through 6/30 of 18. Now, if you look over here to the right, we now actually have an unposted invoice attached to this contract. It's a hyperlink. I can go ahead and click it and get to that unposted invoice from here. Now, the reason that it separates it out as an unposted invoice to begin with is because we want to go ahead and separate the duties of somebody who might be creating the invoices versus somebody who might be posting it. So when I take a look at this, you'll see that it brought in a monthly amount. The total amount of the invoice was $22.50, but because I mentioned that we're doing this prepaid contract, it splits it out as to a monthly amount, $187.50 basically per month. So that's why it separates it out here. That is something that that I have had customers change before, because they might want to just have one line item that's set up that way. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and post this invoice. Say yes to that. That will generate the invoice. I can open the posted invoice. It asks me if I want to open it, and I can print it so that you can see what it looks like. This is another area where Nav is notorious for delivering, you know, a base particular document or base invoice with not a lot of detail or not a lot of, you know, pretty stuff on it, but this is an opportunity for you to go ahead and change the invoice to make it, you know, for your particular company. So it billed out for the full $22.50. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of all that now. And before we continue on, let's take a look at statistics on this contract. If we look at the statistics, before we go further, you'll see that there's a prepaid amount of $22.50. Okay, we have no cost that's been posted against this yet. Nothing has been generated for that. Now, if we wanted to recognize that $187.50 as an invoiced amount, we can run this batch process, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. And that batch process will move those prepaid entries. This is strictly an accounting function. So if I come out to the main menu, if I go to Departments and Contract Management, I have a Post Prepaid Service Contract Entries batch job. So I can say, look, I want to post through 7/31, and I simply run that, and this can be done just on a monthly basis. And when we go back to our service contract that I was just on, and we relook at statistics again, before I move forward, now you'll see that it has moved $187.50 into the invoiced portion of it. So we've taken it out of our liability account, moved it into an actual revenue account. So, and then of course it updates everything from the prepaid amount so you know what's left. And of course we're still sitting at 100% profit. So right now we've got 100% profit for everything that's been invoiced and 100% profit overall for the contract. So let's now switch gears for a second, and let's go ahead and create a service order for that first planned maintenance that we need to go ahead and perform. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this service contract number. Let's minimize that for a second. And right on my role center, I'm going to go to this function to create contract service orders. This is another function that can be run on, let's say, a periodic basis. I want to do this monthly. I want to go ahead and create all the service orders that are due to be serviced this particular month. So I'm going to just put this filter of just this one contract number in here so that we only run and create the service order for that particular one. So now it tells me that one service order was created. Okay, and if I come back to the contract for a second, you'll notice that when I go to my Navigate tab and click on Service Overview, I have the choice to look at service orders that are related to this. So here you have the service order that we just created for this planned maintenance, and if I want to look at it, I click on Navigate and Card, and this generates for me the information, the service order that needs to go ahead and work on it. So let's review the service order for a little bit, and then we'll switch over for a second to how I go ahead and assign a technician to it. So if we look at this service order, grab, of course, the customer. I mentioned before that service order type, so grab that PM. If I scroll a little farther down, I've got my invoicing section, my shipping section, just like on the sales side of things, you know, standard stuff there. It grabs for me the order date and order time, okay? And as I start working on it, it's going to capture the starting date, starting time, and when I finish it, the finishing date and finishing time. We'll come back and take a look at that in a second here. Now, on the lines, it of course inserted that service item, so we know what to work on. And now what I can do is I can come in here and I can put a comment in here. I can say, let's say, a fault comment, and a fault comment is typically designed to be something where the customer brings in a piece of equipment and says, hey, this is the problem with my equipment, can you fix it? In this case, we're just doing planned maintenance, so we're just going to type in oil change due for PM work, or for PM. Okay, so we're just going to type that in. Now, that's an area you can also improve. I've had customers take it and automatically assign comments to this just so that the technician, when they're looking at it, knows what they're supposed to be doing at that point. The other thing that you can do for this is to go to your Functions button, and you can choose what's called a standard service code. So if I say Get Standard Service Codes, I have created a service code called an oil change. Okay, and that oil change, if I take a look at this standard service code, is going to consist of an oil filter and 5 quarts of engine oil. So a pretty basic example. So by setting up that standard service code, I can go ahead and select it and say okay to that. And what that did for me, okay, is when I come down to my line button and go to my service item worksheet, is it automatically inserted those parts out of your inventory that need to be put onto this to perform that work. So it's a way of defaulting in, you know, parts that might be done. You can also put in labor if you wish, but we're going to actually capture that labor when the technician posts their time against it. Okay, so now that I've put in the relevant information for this service order as to what's required, this is planned maintenance, we're doing an oil change on it. Now I'm going to switch gears and put on the hat of, let's say, a service manager or a dispatcher. So if I close out of this for a second and just minimize that contract, on my role center, I've added what's called the dispatch board. If you click on the dispatch board, this is going to list for you all of your open service orders at this point that need to go ahead and get somebody assigned to it. So if I take a look here, I've got my status shows as pending, okay, and I have not allocated anyone to work on it yet. There's 0 allocations. So if I click on resource allocations, and then over here to the top, I can see who is available by choosing the resource availability. So when I click on resource availability and say show matrix, this is going to give me a listing of all the technicians that I have or resources in the system, and then what their availability is for that day. So Mark Hansen in this case has 8 hours available today to work on this. So I'm going to go ahead and assign it to him. But not only that, it shows who is skilled. So if you recall back in the beginning, when we went ahead and assigned that skill code to the service item, I've also assigned that skill code to Mark Hansen. So this can give me the list of only those technicians that have the skills to work on it. So Mark Hansen is clearly the winner here that's going to get this job. So I'll say OK to this. And back on this screen here is I'm going to go ahead and allocate as of 7/1 2 hours, okay, to Mark Hansen. So I choose Mark in this screen, and then that now allocates 2 hours of his time to this particular order. So when I refresh the screen now, you can see that there's 1 allocation that's been assigned to it. So as the dispatcher, I know now with this visual cue here that I don't need to allocate anybody else onto this one, and I can move on to the rest. This screen gives you the ability to filter by resources, allocations, various customers, even service zones. And a service zone is something we didn't discuss as of yet, but you can assign service zones to your customers, meaning could be like a geographical region or something like that. And then you can also assign technicians that can work in that service zone and then use that feature to filter down your list. Okay, back at the, I'm going to close that, and back out here on my role center, I'm going to now click on service tasks. What the service task screen is for your technician. So as a technician, I can come out here and I can filter by myself, right? I can come in here and say, look, I'm Mark Hansen. I only want to see my stuff. Now, clearly, I just have the 1 order, right? So it's showing up here. But the beauty of this is that it shows what they're supposed to be doing today, okay, for that. And then if I choose item worksheet, it actually brings me right out to that screen I showed you before that shows for me the engine oil and the oil filter that I need for that. So as you know, Mark Hansen's performing his work, he knows that he's got to go out there and grab those specific parts, okay? Can also come out here and choose show document, and here he can go ahead and print if he wants. So that brings you right out to the full service order, and if I print that service order, I can see that it shows for me, you know, the forklift that I'm going to be working on. It shows those comments we mentioned before, the oil change is due, and then it shows, you know, the service lines that we've got here. So all that information is relevant that he can get to right from his service task screen, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and exit that and go back to his worksheet. So let's say he performed that work and finished the job. So he can go ahead and capture his time here by entering in his resource entry. So he can put Mark Hansen. I can come into the amount of hours, and let's just say it took him an hour to do this. So it captured that time. Now, if I scroll across here, you'll notice that we have this line discount percent. The parts and the labor, we defined it as 100% line discount. That is truly why this has come in here at 100%. And it indicates to you what that discount is here, line discount type. So it's showing you that there's a contract discount. There could also be a warranty discount applied as well. So the warranty discount overrides the contract discount, and then if you exclude the warranty discount, then the contract discount applies. But you also have the ability to exclude the contract discount if you wish. So if you'll notice here, there's this exclude contract discount checkbox. If I check it, it says you've changed the value. Do you want to continue? Yes. Well, that just wiped out now that line discount percent for that given line. So in a particular scenario, let's say I'm performing the work and I find that there's something else wrong with it that while I'm out there, that's going to be a chargeable type of service. I can, right on this screen, pick and choose which lines I want to invoice for and which I don't. I'm going to go ahead and change it back just to have that 100% line discount assigned to it. And then lastly on here is I can put in my repair status code. The repair status code starts off as initial, right? As Mark is working on it, he can put it into in process. And what that does is while he's working on it, it updates that service order to be in an in process status. So now the service is in an in process status. As a manager, as somebody who's reviewing the service orders that are out there today, you can see which ones are in process, which ones are still pending, which ones might even be finished, and which ones might be on hold. So those are your different statuses. So when I go back to his item worksheet again, if I went ahead and changed this, okay, and said he's done with the work to finished, then Mark has completed his tasks on this. Now, one last thing before I move off of the service item worksheet is that there are add-ons to Dynamics Nav that allow you to do some of this stuff remotely. So you could, instead of having, Mark logged into a computer here posting his time, he could be typing it in on a tablet or on his cell phone or something to have it go back and update and insert all those parts and time that he spent on that. Some companies like to just print off stuff and send it out with their technicians. They do the work, they turn in their paperwork, and you have an administrative staff putting this information in, but there's various options available to you, and Nav does work with some of those. Okay, so I'm going to say finished in this case and say okay to that. So now you'll notice that it has updated this service order to be in a finished status. So let's go to the service order now and take a look here. Okay, this service order is done. It's updated it to a finished status. I am ready to go ahead and invoice for the work that this technician has done. If I come on down here, you'll notice that the starting date and starting time has been captured. Now, obviously, since I'm working in an environment here, I can change that if I want to be to show that it actually finished a little bit later than it actually did, because I'm working in the system here as of the same time. So moving quickly, but that's where you would capture the start date, end time, so you can see what the actual response time was, the service time in hours, things along those lines for metric type reporting. So I'm going to go ahead and take the role of somebody who's reviewing the orders. I'm just going to go ahead and invoice for this particular service order. And you'll notice, though, that when I do invoice for that, and I say yes to look at it, okay, this service order invoice that got created, okay, is for $0. And that's the reason is that because we had that 100% line discount. So there's no charge that's going to be assigned to it. However, when I go back to my service contract, because that was all driven from the contract and all related to the contract, the statistics now reflect that properly. So if I go over here to statistics and take a look, now we've got some information that we can start looking at. So we've got some cost amount associated with the resources, what the discount amounts were. So now when you take this into account here, it shows, look, I've invoiced $187.50 for the given month. I've performed $162 worth of work against it, so I've got $125 profit, which equates out to 66.93%, just for the work that I've done that I've actually recognized that revenue for. And then down here, it's going to show me what the total contract profitability is, knowing that we've prepaid, or they've prepaid for some of that, that we're actually going to be able to allocate that revenue over the course of the life of this contract. So statistics get updated automatically for you every time you post information against that. So let's go ahead and close out of that particular contract for a second. And what I'd like to do is, because that's the end of, let's say, the planned maintenance and how you would perform the service contracts, what I'd like to do is just show you the act of creating a service order for a customer that isn't part of a service contract, something that you're going to go ahead and actually bill for that time. So if I go back out to my main screen and I click on service orders, I'm going to generate a new service order. And I'm going to come out here. I'm going to go to this choice again, and let's say I choose New Concepts Furniture again. Okay, but in this particular case, this is not a planned maintenance. This is something else. This is general service work that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to choose service as my service order type to allocate PM work differently from regular service. And then you'll notice that, of course, the same information flows down as did before, all of your invoicing, your shipping information, and then, of course, we have the same type of fields available to us over here. Now, if I come to the line section, let's take the example of that we didn't sell this particular forklift to the customer. They've just brought it into us, or they're going to have us come pick it up, or whatever the case is. We need to go service a forklift that they already owned, that because they're working with us now, we're going to go ahead and do that work. So what you could do is just type in a description for it. You can type in the serial number that came with it. And then from this standpoint, you can quickly, right on the fly, create the service item. You go to functions and you say, create me my service item. You say yes to that. It tells you 49 was created. It's not part of any contracts. So we're going to be able to start working on this right away. Now, if I take a look at this forklift, I'm going to go ahead and edit it once again, okay, and come out to the Navigate tab, and I'm also going to assign skill codes to this. So that doesn't happen automatically, but you could go ahead and create a modification to have, let's say, a skill set defined by the service item group, so it automatically defaults in. So I'm going to put that skill set again assigned to it, and now I'm going to start performing the work on this. So just like before, I'm going to go to line button, comments, I'm going to go to the faults, and I'm going to say hydraulic lift leak. So the hydraulics are leaking on the lift. So that's the fault. So that's what the technician now knows that they got to go out there and work on. Okay, so just like before, if we come back out here to our role center and go to the dispatch board, I have that capability once again. It's right back on the screen now. That other service order is gone. This service order is now there. I can go ahead and assign a resource to it. So if I come out here again, I look at my availability and show my matrix, I can see that Mark is still the guy that I need to work on, and say okay to that. And I'm going to go ahead and assign Mark. Oops, went out of that. I'm going to go ahead and assign Mark to this particular service order effective as of 7/1. And I'm going to give him 2 hours this time of his time to post against it. So if I say okay to that, that now has allocated, as you can see here, the number of allocations is 1. That's allocated it to Mark again. And then if Mark is out here on the service task looking for his next order to do, he can come out and he can go into the item worksheet and he can start filling out the time and material and stuff that he worked on. Now, the reason I brought up this is because when we did the planned maintenance, there wasn't really any fault codes or anything like that assigned. But in this particular case, you have the ability to start capturing information regarding these different fault codes. So here in the top of the screen, I can come in and I can put in the fault area code. I can set these up to be whatever I need. So this one, in this case, the fault area is the hydraulics. The symptom code is that it's leaking, right? So I choose leak. And then based on the combination of those two, you could pick a specific fault code. So you could have same combination with a different description if you want, and my fault code that I defined is a hydraulic lift leak, okay? So we'll choose HLL for that. So by putting in those fault codes, now we're capturing additional information that we can go ahead and report on later on. So if we're trying to find out, you know, if multiple forklifts that we sell all have these hydraulic lift leaks, then maybe we need to look at correcting that particular problem if we're the manufacturer, or report back to our manufacturer about that issue. So now as we continue to do the work, Mark changes his status to in process, right? So now he's working on it. People can see that he's out there doing the work. When he's done with his work, he can come in here and he can put in the information that he did. So let's say he replaced a gasket in this case. So I'll put quantity of one of those, and it took him 2 hours to do this. So Mark puts his time in this against this particular service order. So puts his 2 hours against that. And if you scroll across to the right, you'll notice there's no discounts anymore, okay? We don't have any discounts because this is not part of a contract. It's not covered under warranty. This is equipment owned by that customer. So lastly, I'm going to go ahead and change it to finished status and say okay to that. So I'm sorry, one more thing. Let me go back in there. There is this resolution code as well. So the last thing that he could do is before he changes it to finished, he can put in the resolution of what he did. So I created one called replace gasket, pretty simple example, but you could do any type of resolution codes you wish to find them how you see fit there. So I'll stay okay to that. So now that has captured that resolution code. And if I come back to that service order and take a look at it, Now I can go ahead and invoice the customer for that work. So now I'm taking I see that it's in a finished status. I want to post that invoice against that customer. So I go here and I say ship an invoice, and I look at my invoice that goes out to the customer, and I preview it here. And now you'll notice that we've actually charged them for the $50 and the $166 for his time, a total of $216. Nav does calculate tax on service. I just did not have any tax calculations set up for this particular customer, but it will, of course, charge for your various sales taxes from that standpoint. So with that said, that completes the gamut of pretty much most of the functionality that's out of the box in the service management. What I'd like to do is at this point just switch this back over here to open it up for any questions that might come from the group.
All right, thanks, Tom. Again, if you have any questions, you can either use the raise your hand feature in your GoToWebinar console, or type them in the questions pane. And let me just give everybody a moment to gather their thoughts and type their questions in. First thing I have here, Tom, is how much does the service management module cost?
The service management module is part of the advanced set. I'm trying to think of the right name, Suzanne. What is the
extended pack, I think?
Extended pack, yeah, sorry, the extended pack. So Nav sells their basic package and then the extended pack, and this comes as part of the extended pack. So as long as you have that, you're good to go.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that question. Next question, is there a technician role center, or is it just the dispatch?
Out of the box, there's only the dispatch role center.
All right.
It's fairly simple to create role centers in Nav. You can go ahead and copy them and then just edit them in the edit mode and have that as your own custom one. So,
yes, indeed. Great. All right. With that, I don't see any other questions at this time. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. If you'd like assistance utilizing Service Management Module in Nav, or just want to provide some feedback or suggestions for future webinars, please, by all means, email your comments to info@archerpoint.com. That's info@archerpoint.com. Again, thank you everyone for your time. This concludes today's session. Have a great rest of your day.